Hey everyone, what is the crack? Welcome to the channel. My name is Lawrence and today we're going to do a buyer's guide for all things sim racing. We're going to be focusing on steering wheels, pedals, shifters and cockpits that you can sit in, frames, rigs, stuff like that. So this video basically takes all the things that I get asked on a regular basis, compresses them into one video and hopefully caters for people who are new to sim racing and existing sim racers who just have some money to upgrade their equipment. Let's do it. So if you are not interested in entry level or mid level, you want to skip straight to high level, check out the description below. I've got timestamps in there where you can go directly to the section that you do care about. There is a little bit of a progression to the whole thing and it's not going to be a very long video, so I do recommend watching the whole thing. We're going to start it off with entry level. Entry level products when it comes to steering wheels, the cheapest and most reliable and just the weapon of choice for most people is a Logitech wheel. Now recently Logitech threw us a curveball with the G923, which is actually priced quite higher. So for the entry level category, I have two recommendations. One is the Logitech G923. I think it's a great wheel, but it is €400 or $400. For that money, you can get a Thrustmaster T300. Now the Thrustmaster T300 has a more sophisticated technology built into it. It's a completely different mechanism and it's just got better force feedback than the Logitech and it's not as loud while it's running. The main reason I'm focusing quite a lot on Logitech is because you can get great value in the second-hand market and you can also buy new G29s and G920s. They're the previous generation. You can buy those for really good prices, often around $200, €200. That's a great value bundle for a steering wheel and pedal setup. Now you do have to buy the shifter separate with both of those, but I don't recommend the Logitech shifter or the Thrustmaster shifter. I just don't think they're great. I think they're good enough. If I had to choose one of them, I actually would choose the Logitech shifter. For the simple reason that when I was using the Logitech for an extended period of time, I never had missed shifts. Yes, it felt like a toy. The TH8A looks and feels better when you're just holding it, but in actual use, the TH8A, I found it a lot looser and less predictable than the Logitech shifter. But both of those are not on the cards and not being recommended here. The one that I recommend in the entry level category is an amazing product called the SHH shifter. It is a fantastic piece of equipment. It's largely 3D printed. The internal mechanism is metal. It does sequential, it does H pattern, it can have 6 gears, 7 gears, you can change the top plate to make it suit. So if you're a drifter and you only ever need like 4 gears or 5 gears or whatever, you can change the top plate and you can even, you can block out fifth if you wanted to. It's really cool, very well thought out product. And it's only about €120 shipped to your door. Unfortunately for console users can't use the SHH shifter. On a console, you're largely tied to the ecosystem that you're in. So for instance, if you have a Logitech steering wheel base, you need to use Logitech products. Thrustmaster, you're tied into Thrustmaster. Fanatec, you're tied into Fanatec. As for handbrake options, well on console, you're pretty limited. You've really only got the Thrustmaster TSS Sparko mod, but that only works if you're on the Thrustmaster system, or you've got the Fanatec handbrake, which only works if you're on Fanatec. So on console, handbrakes are there's not a great selection. But PC users in this case have a lot more choice. So there is what is referred to as an eBay handbrake. Now, you can get a lot of them on eBay, but you can get them on all platforms. You can even get them on Wish, you can get them on Amazon and the likes, and I've linked to one or two of them below. Buying a cheap handbrake, you do get what you pay for though. Generally, the springs are very weak in them, but the important thing is that they do function as a handbrake. They've usually got an analog mechanism, so you've got that slight analog progression to it. They're really good for an entry-level setup. I highly recommend just an eBay handbrake. As for frames and cockpits, for an entry-level setup, do not look past the Playseat Challenge. Now I know it looks a little bit like a toy, but it's actually really good. It's surprisingly sturdy and it's actually better than some of the other Playseat offerings when it comes to rigidity and comfort. Your seating position is really good, and the best thing is for people who aren't sure about committing a space in their home to sim racing, you can actually just fold it up, put it away. It's a brilliant piece of kit and it's very affordable. Moving on to the mid-level steering wheels, my weapon of choice for mid-level rig is the Thrustmaster TS PC Racer if you're on PC, or the TS XW if you're on Xbox. Unfortunately, there's no equivalent which is available for PS4. Now, people have gotten it working using a drive hub. I don't really recommend that approach. I think that you should use a wheel that's actually natively compatible. But again, I don't have much experience with that, so do some research there. You may be able to do it. Often, those Thrustmaster wheels come up cheap second-hand as well, so keep an eye out on the market. The other wheel that I recommend in the mid-level range is the Fanatec CSL Elite. The CSL Elite is a very, very capable wheel, and a lot of people who upgrade to it actually never need to upgrade any further. Same with the Thrustmaster. They are really, really good wheels, and especially if it's your first experience with a sim racing wheel, you can't really do better for 500 to 600 euro. It's just not possible. The great thing about both of those is the Thrustmaster and the Fanatec, you can change the steering wheels out on them very, very easily. They have a range of wheels. The Fanatec selection is a lot bigger than the Thrustmaster selection, but I do really like the Thrustmaster wheels, especially that open rim. When it comes to mid-level pedal selection, I do recommend going for a load cell pedal. Generally in the entry level, you don't get load cell, you just get a brake that's measured off the distance that you press the pedal. The only thing is that it's very hard to remember that your bite point is like halfway or whatever. Whereas with a load cell, it's a lot more like pushing against a plate of metal. But your foot and your muscles remember exactly how hard you need to brake. And all around, it just makes your braking a lot more consistent. So for the mid-level range, the best entry-level load cell brakes out there are the Thrustmaster TLCM if you're in the Thrustmaster ecosystem, or the Fanatec CSL Elite load cell pedals are really, really good. Now, I have more experience with the Fanatec load cell pedals than I do with the Thrustmaster pedals. From what I see, reviews are very, very positive, but I can only go off my own experience, and for a mid-level rig, you just can't go wrong with a set of CSL Elite pedals with the load cell. I'll go as far as to say that the CSL Elite pedals are quite close to the Fanatec V3 pedals. If you do have the CSL Elite already, you won't need to upgrade until you're talking top-end pedals. As for mid-level shifter, well, I know I mentioned it at the start, but I still think the SHH shifter is good enough for mid-level. Now, one problem that I'm highlighting here is that we don't have a great selection when it comes to shifters. If you are tied into an ecosystem on PlayStation or on Xbox, you are very, very limited. But even on PC, there's not much out there. There are more products arriving in the market at the moment, and it's quite an exciting space. Apart from the SHH shifter, nothing too exciting has happened in the shifter space in the last 7 years. The mid-level handbrake that I recommend, if you are on console, you're limited. You either have the Sparco TSS for your Thrustmaster, or if you're on Fanatec, get the Fanatec V1.5 handbrake. If you're on PC, I recommend the V1.5 handbrake. It is a better handbrake than the Thrustmaster TSS Sparco mod. I have both of them here and I've compared them side by side. The Fanatec is the one that has its place on my rig. I would consider my rig quite high-end, and we're talking mid-end here. The Fanatec gets my vote. And as for the frame in the mid-level market, I highly recommend, and I have one sitting right here, the Simitech K2R. I have the Simitech K2, which is not too wildly different, but it is an amazing rig. You could easily just park a car up on top of it and work under the car. It is so strong, so sturdy, very, very easy to put together compared to an 80/20 rig, and all the accessories that they give with it, that they sell with it, are just amazing. They start at around, I think, 400 euro, all the way up to about 900 euro or so, but they've got triple display, all that kind of stuff if you want to upgrade in the future. I highly recommend them. They're based in Portugal, and the service, everything has been top notch from them. Moving on to the high-end space, and this is where things get very, very interesting. Now, as we go through these various sections, the pricing does get higher. But the best value direct drive wheel, and direct drive, for those of you who don't know, is where the motor in your steering wheel base that gives your force feedback is attached directly to the steering wheel. There are no belts, no cogs, no anything. It's directly attached. Direct drive is becoming so popular that people don't really consider anything that's not direct drive as high-end anymore, whereas in the past they really would have. If you're not quite ready to make the leap into direct drive, I do recommend the Fanatec Club Sport wheel, but by the time you've got everything added up and all your accessories on those, they can be as expensive as my first recommendation for the high-end wheelbase, which is of course the Simagic M10. As many of you know, I had one. I was one of the first people in the world to be allowed to review one, and I really, really loved it. It blew my expectations out of the water. It's a great piece of kit, and it has even been improved since I had it. So I highly recommend the Simagic M10. It's great value for money. If you're not too keen on a new brand in the market, and if you want something a little bit more tried and tested, my other choice in this category, in the high-end category, is the Fanatec DD1 wheel. Fanatec needs no introduction in the sim racing world. They're tried and tested, and the wheel selection and accessory selection is pretty much second to none. I highly recommend the DD1. I think it's a good wheel. I don't think it's the best out there, but we'll get to that in a little while. As for pedals in the high-end market, I recommend the Fanatec Club Sport V3 pedals. I don't recommend them on their own. I recommend that you get that brake performance kit with it. It's only about €30 extra, but it's well worth the investment. Now, some people might be thinking, they're not the best pedals out there. I still have another category. The next category is going to be top end, but for high end, Fanatec pedals, for the price, I think they're really, really good. And I think that they're probably as much as most people will ever need. If you're very, very enthusiastic, and if you really, really want better pedals, you're going to have to fork out a good €200 or €300 more just for the pedals. That's pretty much twice the price of these pedals. That's why they've made it into the high-end category. I think they do represent great value for money. In the high-end category, the shifter recommendation that I have is the Fanatec Shifter V1.5. It is a very, very good shifter. The design is about 7 years old now, but it is a really, really good product. I very much enjoy mine. It's the closest feeling shifter to a real car on a simulator that I have tried personally. There are more high-end shifters out there, but when it comes to a shifter around the €300 mark, you just can't go wrong with the Fanatec shifter. You'll see them on most high-end rigs. As for high-end handbrake recommendations, I'm going to stick with the Fanatec V1.5 Club Sport handbrake. I think it is a really, really good handbrake, and even on a high-end rig, it's very difficult to justify spending twice the price for a handbrake that is admittedly better, but it's not twice as good. And lastly, in the high-end category, the frame, the cockpit. I recommend a SimLabs GT1. It's a really, really good, well-built, well-delivered. It's a great, great product. Very, very sturdy and very modular. So you can do whatever you want with it, set it up whatever way you want. And it's relatively affordable. So I really like it. It's a great product. And moving on to the top end section. So for the top end section, I am not going to list out components for a €1,000,000 simulator that's used by McLaren or Ferrari or whatever. I'm going to talk about realistically what can you have in your home if you have the money, which is just realistic, easy to live with, all that kind of stuff. So let's start off with the wheelbase. For the first time in the wheelbase category, there really is only one recommendation here, and that is the Simucube SC2 Pro. Now, Simucube do a sport model, which is slightly less powerful, and they do an ultimate level, but I really think that the Pro is all most people need. The ultimate is supposed to be better. I've never had the chance to actually use one, but as far as I'm concerned, the Pro is as close to real force feedback as it gets right now. On the pedal side of things, I highly recommend the Hosingfeld Sprint pedals. I think they're extremely good pedals, and I would consider them top end. My personal preference for pedals is the Mecha Cup 1. It's a slightly smaller, less known company, but I do think that they're better than the Sprints, so I highly recommend the Mecha Cup 1 pedals. They're in or around the €800 mark, both of them, so keep an eye out for sales. They're really, really good pedals, and if you buy those pedals, you'll probably never need to upgrade again. As for shifters in the top end category, it's going to be the Fanatec again. There is a better shifter out there, which is the ProSim Quaife shifter, but it is also about 4 times the price, maybe even 5 times the price of the Fanatec shifter. Realistically, I don't think it's worth the money, but there are better shifters out there. You can spend as much money as you want in sim racing. I think that the best shifter in the consumer market right now is the Fanatec shifter. And back to handbrakes. Now, Hosingfeld products, none of them work on consoles. They're all PC based. I forgot to mention that when we were talking about the Hosingfeld Sprint pedals. The Hosingfeld handbrake is an amazing piece of equipment. It really is the best handbrake that we have at our disposal within reason out there at the moment. I've never tried a proper hydraulic handbrake, so I can't talk about things that I've never experienced. But the feel of a Hosingfeld handbrake is just very, very good. If you have a top end rig and you want to claim that it's a top end rig, you can't have that Fanatec handbrake on there. You need to have the Hosingfeld. And as for the cockpit recommendation, you can't look much further than the SimLab P1X. The P1X is quite similar to the GT1 that I mentioned in the high-end category. The thing is that the profile is a lot thicker and a lot more sturdy and durable than it is in the GT1. So if you're going to give your rig some abuse, or if you really want a long-term investment, get that P1X. So there you have it, my recommendations in the 4 categories. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, but I know, and I'm well aware, there are lots of other options out there. If you have options that didn't make the list, do put them in the comments below. If you're not subscribed, please do consider subscribing. 75% of the people who watch my videos are not subscribed. That's a very, very big number. 3 out of 4 people who watch this video right now are not subscribed. I'd appreciate a subscribe. Go on. As always, thank you so much for watching. Thanks for the amazing support, especially recently. I'm Lawrence. I'll chat to you later.